Hi, welcome. We're going to be talking about accessibility in Microsoft EDU tools today. We're going to focus on three main concepts. This concept is going to be focused around creating accessible content. So really something that most educators should know and be able to do with their content, but a lot of times we just don't find the resources to do it. So I'm going to be referencing this bit.ly link throughout my presentation, bit.ly/accessible-Microsoft, and this will be where you can find all of your resources after the fact as well. My name is Lindsey. I am the Microsoft Learning Consultant for the Philadelphia area and most of Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And it is my job to go into schools and present on things like accessibility, things like Office 365, things that can better your students' outcomes and kind of bring engagement into the classroom and those types of things. I bring teaching experience to this position, so I was a teacher prior to this role, and I actually have dual degrees in elementary and special education. So accessibility is something that's very near and dear to my heart, and I want that to kind of show throughout what I'm talking about with these tools, because it really should be something that you're passionate about, so that students can access all of the content that they need to. We're going to really just hone in on how can we make our tools accessible for everyone. And I have a quote that I always like to start with, which is Marlee Matlin. She's a award-winning actress, and she says it best by saying, no one should have to ask for access. It should really just be there. So your students should not have to come up to you and really ask for access to things. You should be mindful in saying, I need to create this to be accessible for all of my students, whether my student is using a screen reader, whether my student is someone who is hearing impaired. It really does not matter. You should be creating content that's accessible for all of your students. So we're really going to talk about, and we're going to focus on creating that accessible content. And I have it headed, the heading in my sway for today is just authoring accessible content. So really I asked the question, and just like I just mentioned, is what if a student with visual impairments walks into your room tomorrow? Is your content, is that lesson, is that lecture, is that PowerPoint presentation accessible to that student? And if I were to ask myself this starting out in the classroom, my answer would have been absolutely not. Although I was trained in special education and I have a master's degree in it, I just wasn't creating accessible content. And it wasn't because I didn't care about my students. It was just because I didn't know all that was, available to me and for free. So we're really going to focus on some concepts that you can have access to in Office products. The Office products that you're already using, you already know and love, like PowerPoint, Excel, Word, OneNote. These Office products that we're using to create our lesson plans, or we're using to push out content to students. This is where we're going to find all of these amazing accessible content resources. So first we're going to focus on alternative text and also automatic alternative text. If you've never heard of these things, basically alternative text means you're providing a description of an image, a picture, a video, so that someone who is accessing the content via a screen reader can actually access that image. Because think about it, if you have someone who is visually impaired and they're sitting in your classroom trying to access that PowerPoint, they don't know that it's a picture of an orca whale, right? You need to actually put into alternative text so that they could access it via a screen reader. And here's just an example, and I have this on my sway, but I'm actually going to pull up a demo right in PowerPoint. I have this really nifty kinetic and potential energy lecture that maybe I'll push out to my students. And one of the things that I can notice in this presentation is if I right-click on a picture, I have the ability to go to Edit Alt Text. This is going to bring up my alternative text box, which again, alternative text is a description of an image that you want to put in there for people who cannot actually see the screen, who are using a screen reader. So one of the things that it's asking me, and Office products do a really great job of actually saying, well, this is why you need it. So it's saying, how would you describe this object and its context to someone who is blind? So you're going to go ahead and write in here how you would describe this image to, or how you would want your students to access this image. So I might say, a picture of a man holding a brick, waist height. Because remember, I want them to get the feeling of, well, this is an example of potential energy. That's the lesson that I'm giving. So potential energy is holding a brick at waist height, right? It's potential, it's not kinetic yet, it's potential. So this is what I want them to gain from viewing that image. So I'm going to write exactly what I want them to gain, exactly that description in my alternative text box. Now, when I say automatic alternative text, one of the things that we have built into a lot of our tools at Microsoft is, excuse me, this automatic alternative text. So basically, it's going to allow AI technology, artificial intelligence, to actually just kind of scan the image and generate a description for that image based on what it sees. So if I click on generate a description for me, notice that this image, AI could not recognize. So some images you may be able to generate that automatic description. Some images you would actually have to physically write in on your own. So that's something that really we need to be mindful of as teachers. And I have teachers saying to me all the time, well, you know, I don't teach students who are blind or visually impaired, so I don't have to worry about that. Remember what we said at the beginning, we want all of our content to be accessible for all of our students, not just if we have students who are in a specific category. This should be, you as an educator being proactive about creating your content. And to use that content from year in and for years to come, that alternative text is going to live in there so that you won't need to worry about it. So one of the things that we also have built into our, and I'm just going to flip back to my sway just to go right into it, built into our products is something called the accessibility checker. And this is probably the single greatest thing that you can do before sending out your content. So let's say I were making a PowerPoint and I wanted to send it out to parents. I want to, of course, go ahead and click on the spell check because that's what we all do before we send things out, right? We always spell check. But another great tool is before I send this out to parents, I can go ahead and I can click review, check accessibility. Now, this accessibility checker is housed within not only the desktop versions of PowerPoint and Word and Excel, but it's also in the online versions of these things as well. So when you think about, I'm using this particular device, these features, accessible features, are built into the online versions as well. So you don't technically need a Windows 10 device to actually access these features. These are in our PowerPoint Online as well. So once I go ahead and click on Accessibility Checker or Check Accessibility, it's going to bring up all of my errors on the right-hand side. So I'm able to click on those errors and I'm able to click directly into something, for example, this image, and it's telling me it's missing alternative text. And we know that it is because remember I just deleted the alternative text from that box, but I'm going to be able to click on that. I'm going to be able to see down at the bottom of the checker why I need to fix it and the steps to take to fix it. So it's, and I always say this at my trainings, but it's literally me inside your device telling you, hey, this isn't accessible and here's how to fix it. So this is a really great tool just to make your teachers and your colleagues aware. Just say, hey, before you send anything out, go ahead in and click on check accessibility because it's a great tool to actually make sure that your content is accessible. Now, not only do I see that missing alternative text and I can click on all of those images that are missing, but I also see one of my slides is missing a title. So I can click on missing slide title and I can go right in and it tells me, hey, I put this in as a text box, it's not visible as a title. The reason that that's important, and I can clearly see why that's important here. Slide titles are used for navigation and selection by those who are not able to view the slide. So again, if somebody is using a screen reader, they're able to maneuver between slides by those titles. So it's really important that you check this accessibility checker because your, PowerPoint, your Excel sheet, your Word document, you could be sending out, and those students who are accessing via screen reader do not have any access. Another option in the accessibility checker are these warnings. So you can click on these warnings and it basically tells you, hey, this is a warning that we're noticing. You might want to change it, but it's based on the context of your PowerPoint. So you want to go in and you want to read why you need to fix it and the steps to take to actually fix that. But this is a really great tool, you're using spell checker anyway, go right into review and check the accessibility on your documents before sending those out as well. Now back to my sway. I'm going to scroll through, and in the accessibility checker option, you do see that I do have a GIF or GIF of what that's actually going to look like when you run the accessibility checker. But I also want to point out a few other really nice things that are built into Office. The first one is Office templates. There are actually templates that you can get within Office products that are accessible templates. So when I go into File here and go into New, I have my template option, right? And if you're like me and you don't like reinventing the wheel, you're gonna go ahead and look for templates, right? So I'm gonna go up here and I'm gonna search for accessible. When I search accessible, it's going to bring up templates that are already starting from this accessible realm. So whether that be because they have a higher contrast, whether that be because maybe their fonts are easier to read for some students, whatever that may be, they are categorized under this accessible template option. So you can go in and you can actually start from an accessible template right away. We also have something called the Tell Me search, which is built into not only our desktop applications, but also our online applications. So if I go into back to this PowerPoint Online, up here, I see this Tell Me What You Want to Do. So I can click on this and I can actually go ahead and start typing something. And I can go ahead and find what I'm trying to find. Now, this is really great for me because I am one of those people who will search through all of the ribbon until I find what I'm looking for, whether that be, inserting a picture or what have you. So I can go up here and I can actually type in what I'm looking for or what I'm needing, and it will be readily accessible for me. This is a great tool to show students. Don't just use it yourself, but actively show it to your students because they probably don't know that it's there either. And this is a really great tool for helping them find what they need to find as well. Another thing that we have in PowerPoint is called PowerPoint Designer. And this is a really great tool for students who may have, creatively, maybe they're just stuck and they're needing some examples on different ways to make their PowerPoint quote unquote pretty, right? Or more creative. So what you actually can do in PowerPoint is you can pull up something called PowerPoint Designer. And PowerPoint Designer actually allows you to get just a few design ideas on the slide that you're on. So I'm going to go back to a slide here. This slide just has a title on it and it has an image. And what I see on the right-hand side are design ideas that I can use for that slide particularly. So again, this is something that's really nice for all of us. I think just in use of PowerPoint, it can save you some time. But it's also really nice for those students who are hesitant to present because maybe the student in front of them looks really nice and they don't think their PowerPoint looks as nice. So definitely check out design ideas in PowerPoint. This is again built into both PowerPoint Desktop and also PowerPoint Online. I also want to note, and this is our kind of our last piece here in accessible content, but color and pattern contrast is so important. And I think that something for teachers especially, something that I can think of when I was teaching was, of course you teach this, right? You teach your students, hey, you probably shouldn't put that white text on a yellow background. People just aren't going to be able to see it. But one of the things that I really wanted to make known is in both Windows and also in Office, we have high contrasting modes for both. So this is something that you may not even know about your students, that they may need a higher contrast within looking at information. And another example of this is just the fact that as much as 8% of the male population and 0.5% of female population has some degree of color blindness. And if you notice in this pie chart here, I've differentiated by not only color, but also by design. So you can see this, this one has, tiny dots. This one has kind of lines. This one's checkered. But then the most important is that each pie piece is differentiated by an actual line. So that if a student is looking at this pie chart and just seeing shades of gray, they're able to differentiate piece by piece because I've used two different methods to differentiate those things. I also have included on the Sway presentation just a good basic quick, overview of great contrasting colors and values. And this is something that you can share with your students as well. Again, all of this should be things that you're sharing with students because just like you might not have known before this video, your students don't know either. So you definitely need to, take the steps to actually physically teach this to them. Hey guys, notice I'm using the accessibility checker. Why am I doing that? And maybe have that conversation. It's really important for the newer generations to realize and understand that there are steps that they can take to make their lives easier and make others' lives easier as well by creating accessible content from the get-go. That's the end of this segment. Thank you so much for watching.